Martin Onyango from the Center for Reproductive Rights.
Good evening, Cyril Aluvega from Maseno University, Department of Sociology and Anthropology.
Dr. Nancy Baraza, Faculty of Law, University of Nairobi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leona Gola from JQuat. All the best.
We invite the first proposer to begin for us this debate. Hear, hear.
In case this is my last debate, I would like to shout out my partner. He has been incredible. I could not be here without him. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would also like to shout out the sponsors of this event. This has been incredible. We cannot say thank you enough. And lastly, thank you to my parents and God, Almighty God. That being said, POI preference, raise your hand or say POI, don't badger. 7-minute speeches. Okay, so I start in 3, 2, and 1. Panel, we are living in a world where when a child has been born, raised, made into an adult and actually becomes successful, they are then faced with the choice whether or not they should cater for the people who raised them, for the people who set the foundation as to whether or not they are going to succeed in life, right? Now, in our world, we believe that it is not only important, but also paramount to create and enforce laws that are going to mandate people to take care of their parents or guardians. Now, why do we think this is necessary, right? One, we believe that there are children who have grown, right, and they have been nurtured by their parents towards a certain age, but after that, they have pursued careers, they have become successful, and once again, life is long, they have lived through many experiences, and at a point in time in which they believe that their parents did not contribute to their success, then these children can choose not to take care of their parents, or these children can hold a specific grudge towards their parents and choose not to take care of them when these parents attain old age. Now, this is very problematic, and I'm going to defend why we don't agree with that. One, seeing that this is this House Wood debate, I am going to explain to you exactly how we are going to create and enforce this responsibility. One, we are going to begin with public awareness. This basically looks like educating the public on the importance of parents within society, the fact that without that foundation, you would not have been able to achieve success in the first place. The fact that parents sacrifice their time, their money, their energy, and entirely their youth in order to raise you, right? We are going to educate the public on the importance of parents and the importance that children should actually take care of them when they cannot take care of themselves. Because once again, it is a trade-off. When you are an infant of 2 years old, 1 year old, you could not take care of yourself and your parents took care of you. Therefore, it is justified for us to say that when your parents cannot take care of themselves, then it should actually be required of you to take care of them. It is that simple. It is a trade-off, right? After public awareness, we are also going to cater to things like custody, because we understand that people have varying levels of success. We have people who are millionaires, people who earn less, people who earn more, and therefore that is something that is going to be analyzed so that the care that you provide to your parents is congruent to how much you earn or how much you can socially cater for. What do I mean by this? If you cannot afford medical care, then by law you will not be required to cater to your parents' medical bills. But of course, if your home has another room for your parents to be housed in and to be taken care of, then that is going to be a requirement for you. So custody is going to be important, whereby the most successful child, by whatever metrics, social or financial, are going to have a bigger burden towards taking care of their parent. Thirdly, we're also going to run this case from a point of tort law. What do I mean by this? That if you neglect your parent, then that can be addressed through civil lawsuits, whereby your parents can actually take you to court and say that, well, my child has not taken care of me. My child is seeing that I am suffering from certain medical ailments, and they have chosen to ignore me. In the same vein that children are allowed to sue their parents for abuse and neglect, then we believe it is justified for parents to be able to do the same. If you neglect your parents in the old old age, then they should be able to actually go to the government and say, well, I took care of this child, I raised them, I was there for them, and they have decided to abandon me. The same way your child can do the same to you if you choose to abuse them or neglect them. Fourth, we're also going to cater to things like social services and regulations whereby these elder people are going to be regularly checked up on to ensure that these things have actually been addressed. So we're not just going to tell you to take care of your parent and leave you. We are going to follow up and make sure that your parent is getting that amount of care that is necessary, right? And in the case where you refuse entirely and you break the law, because this is now going to be law, if you break the law and choose not to cater to your parent, then certain fines and imprisonments are going to be offered based on exactly how much damage you've done to your parent. What do I mean by this? If you refuse to cater to your parents' medical bills and you have the capacity to do so, then you are going to be fined, or you're going to be told by the courts that you should actually cater to that. I'm sorry, you have a...
I have one question for
Yes,
you.
yes.
What happens to the constitutional requirement of social protection as a duty of government?
All right, so we're saying that the government has a duty to protect its people, and we understand that. But one, social welfare services in status quo have been limited. We are living in a third world country where resources are limited. We don't have the money to cater for this. And as much as the government has an obligation to care for its people, and we have hospice care, we have governmental institutions that actually offer homes for these elder people, we believe that it would be easier on society, it would be easier on government, and society as a large, if children took up the responsibility of raising these parents, so that when you don't have family, when you don't have a support system, then you can pursue the measures that have been given to you by the government. Then you can pursue social welfare, then you can pursue government, because you believe that it is actually important for you as a child to take care of your parent. Right, sorry. Now, why do we believe this is important? One, I've talked about elder neglect and how that there are rising cases of children who refuse to take care of their parents, who actually abandon them and leave them to their own means. And that is wrong, because like I said, your parents took care of you as a child. And the trade-off of this is that it is justified for you to actually do that to them, to take care of them rather, when they cannot do that to themselves. We cannot leave them to a point of neglect, because no matter how old you are still a Kenyan, you are still a member of this society, you are still a member of that family. Understand that easy buy-in also exists in our world. We understand that cases of abuse and parental neglect are the minority. I'm talking 10 or 5%. But the greater majority of people are ready and willing to cater to their parents. So it's not going to be an uphill task of forcing people to cater to their parents, but rather people have already agreed, people have already bought into it. Black tax already exists. When you go to the US, you send money to your parents and you do all this to make sure that they're already comfortable. So buy-in already exists, and we feel like that actually pushes for greater inclusivity. We need to understand, one, that it is also economically feasible to just enforce filial responsibility, because like I said, in-home care is less expensive as opposed to paying a nurse to actually take care of your parents, because that is the alternative. If you're not taking care of them and you're not going to abandon them, then you have to pay a nurse or pay somebody who works in hospice to take care of your parent. And that is much more expensive than if you had decided to just stay with them and cater to them as a child, right? In my last minute, we need to understand, panel, that it is paramount that children understand that parents are their foundation. Parents took them to school, parents paid their fees, parents sacrificed their time, financial constraints, their resources, their energy and everything into ensuring that you attained the legal age of 18 with the necessary education, the necessary health, necessary shelter and clothing to make sure that you succeed. So when you get to a point where you have succeeded, it is justified to say that it is because of your parents, because they set that foundation. And therefore we do not see why it is wrong to ensure and enforce that parents do not leave that children do not leave their parents behind, and to ensure that they receive an appropriate amount of care even when they are elders, even when they are of old age, because that is simply what they deserve. Thank you.
We thank that speaker for that fine speech. We welcome the first opposer to begin for us opposition's case. Here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nika Twain. So before I start, shout out to Ndolo, amazing partner, and just everyone who debated today takes courage, and also shout out to our opponents, and shout out to the sponsors of this event and everyone who's here at large. So I'll start my speech in 3, 2, One, panel. We agree with a couple of things that proposition tell you. One, we're in a third world country. There is lack of resources and there is all these things. If that's the case, it then means that young people are suffering. Now you are giving them the burden of taking care of their parents, but also taking care of the kids that they are giving birth to. That's particularly problematic. We think status quo already actively discourages young people. High taxation, all these things. For old people, we think these people necessarily get some sort of what is it called? Like you get some sort of benefit or some sort of help from the government. We have pensions. We have things like the government just trying to fund old people because the government acknowledges that, yes, we think these people are not able to like actually be productive. But if the argument that they bring from side proposition is that, see, you can't take care of your parent because the government doesn't like is that the government doesn't have enough money to take care of it. We think this is particularly problematic. What is the incentive for the government to tell you, do something just because I can't do it? The government has a state contract theory. They need to protect the citizens. They can't fail on that and again come and just say, no, we are going to impose laws that actively asks these young people to take care of their parents. We think this is particularly problematic. But what happens in status quo? We think people just generally, people take care of their parents. We don't think that people neglect their parents in and of themselves. If this happens, these are the very minority cases because just human beings, you know, like these people gave birth to you and took care of you, you take care of them. What they need to defend is why they need to exist laws that make it mandatory for you to take care of these particular parents. They argue an argument on justification and tell you like, look, at the point in time where your parents gave birth to you, took care of you and all these things, we think you are justified to take care of them. Panel, just responses to this case. Not to be offensive, but you think your parents had a choice to give birth to you. You don't have a choice to have your parents, like they are not, you don't have that choice. Not in any offensive manner, but parents had a choice to give birth to you. That's why you can take them to court if they don't take care of you. Because when they engaged in that action, they knew the consequences that are going to exist. We think for children, you don't have that choice. In and of itself, at that point, you are just born into this world. This is just something you found that exists. But regardless, you still help them anyway. What this means then, if you put this mandatory, you are necessarily saying that if you don't take care of your parents, regardless of your financial situation, we are going to take you to jail. This is harmful because this is the reason as to why crimes are going to exist. We think the incentive for you to not go to jail or to not be taken to court and all these things are going to make you get into crimes because you want to provide for your family, like you want to provide for your parents, because if you don't do that, you're necessarily going to end up in jail. That is particularly problematic. We don't support that from proposition. We think people necessarily just take care of their parents. We don't think there needs to exist a law that makes it so mandatory on you. We think people are already facing hard challenges. There is high taxation. Now you want to have kids, you want to have a family and all these things. And now the court and the government in and of itself is asking you to make sure that you take care of your parents just because they brought you into this earth. We don't think that's the debate. But even for rich people and all these things, what these guys are trying to tell you is that it's okay for you to send 10,000 at home. That's taking care of you. They don't define to us what taking care of you looks like. We think taking care can be even emotional and all these things. But what do we say? If it is made really mandatory for you to take care of them, we think you're going to make a lot of sacrifices that are necessarily not important. This looks like if you don't have money, you'd want to still take care of them because you don't want to go to court. This then means you'll probably go and live with them in shags and all these things. We think that is bad because the time we're supposed to be using to self-actualize as an individual, because we think self-actualization is important to you as a person. You spend this time and it's still not acknowledged, because even in tuition pump, the uncle who stays at home with your grandparents compared to the uncle who sends money from Nairobi, we think the uncle who sends money from Nairobi is more valuable. So these guys are telling you it's okay if you just send 10,000 and don't even be there for your parents. We don't think that's an argument we are willing to concede from from opposition. Do I have a question?
In conjunction with the state to look after the aged.
We think that's okay, but we think at the point in time, these policies are made
very like mandatory, the laws then means if you don't do it, you go to jail, regardless of how your financial situation looks like. If you don't take care of your parents, you have to go to jail. We don't care if you're suffering yourself, you just have to take care of these parents. The mandatory is like much heavier if the laws are enforced. We think this is particularly problematic to you as an individual for your particular self-growth. But we think like even like the other argument we bring to you is like the incentives to create crime. I've already told you in my speech, at the point in time where these laws are already there, like these laws exist and they are enforced and they are made mandatory in that if you don't follow them, you're going to get punished for it. You'd want to necessarily fulfill these laws. That is why no matter how mad you are at someone, you can't kill them because you don't want to go to jail. We think then this means you're necessarily going to do stuff that are going to like, you're going to try to solve one crime by doing another crime. That is, you're going to probably kill someone or like probably just steal from them just to fulfill the mandatory obligation that you have to take care of your parents. I've already engaged you on the whole idea of choice and why parents had a choice, and that's why it's justified for them to take care of us. But we don't think we have a like obligation or that choice to like we don't get to choose that choice. We think that's bad. But what happens to continuity of life? At the point in time where it's mandatory and you need to defend these people, you hinder the continuity of life because now you have to choose whether you want to give back to your own kids or take care your parents with your limited resources. You can't control that you have parents. What you're going to control is not having kids because now you don't want to have kids because there already exists pressure for you to take care of your parents. What can you control? You stop having kids so that you can take care of your parents. This hinders continuity. We think this is particularly bad. They need to defend why it is essentially very important to have these laws to actually like take care of your parents. We think people do it even without the laws. People just like do these things and take care of their parents. Why is it very necessary to have the laws imposed and make it like mandatory for you to take care of your parents? We don't even think they engage with the whole idea of like you as a person having the choice, and like we don't think they win this debate. Thank you.
We thank that speaker for that fine speech. We welcome the second proposer to continue for us their case. Here.
My name is Michael Daniel Danaro, and I will be proving my stance in this motion and why I believe for what I stand for. My time starts now. Panel, adjudicators, and members of this house, I want you to understand that if you're older than me and it gets to a point where you cannot help yourself, do not worry. I promise I have your back. I will be there for you regardless. This house will create and enforce filial responsibility laws, mandating that people take care of their parents and guardians. Panel, for it to literally be considered to be put in place under contemplation as a law means that there is already an existing problem in the status quo. That has to be understood. Panel, for you to say that we want to put this as a law, it means that there's a great percentage of old people right now in the backyard who are suffering. There's a great percentage of people right now, even in the modern developed urban centers, and they're living in slums because apparently they have no other way to look after themselves. Panel, my partner has come in and closely defended and told you why and how this can be implemented. And I'll just come in and put emphasis and give clarity on the reason why we support this, why I believe that as much as I have every right to sue my parents for not taking me to school, I believe that my parents, when they are at the age of 80, 70, when they can never help themselves anymore, they have every incentive and right and moral standing to take me to court for not helping them. Why is this? I'll start by rebattling their point on autonomy of choice and choice as a matter of itself. Pardon. We finally, and yes, we accept, a child is born without consent. They do not have autonomy of choice in that matter when they are brought into this world. Therefore, in that itself, they are saying that the children have no need to burden themselves in this world in terms of caregiving because they were brought into this world on their own accord. Panel, we tell you this. The upbringing of a child is completely hinged on the material and emotional sacrifice of the community stroke parent to raise that child to the adult stage. Whether they want to buy into it or not, the sheer fact that Ndolo is wearing those trousers and his mother is the one who bought it for him puts Ndolo under literally the obligation and burden to tell the mother that, here, fine, the worst I can do is give you back the money you got me these trousers with. That by in itself points out why we need this put as a law. Panel, understand this. Elders are neglected. Elders are considered at the current status quo as a marginalized group. And in our world, we are very inclusive to the point that we actually care for those segregated and help them. That is the elder people, the elderly. We do not have, in our world, we do not have children who recognize, again, they talked about how in our world, we have an easy buy-in. It is easier for a child to acquiesce, to actually being helpful and responsible to the continual existence of a parent or an old person because they understand the obligations that have been put in place. Secondly, in our world, we are telling you something very, very important that they will not be able to address at all. We have every incentive, together with all the other incentives they have in their world, for us to be better. Why is that? People are pushed to cater for the parents' needs on a simple basic law that way they are better person as well as the older parents. What do I mean by this? If as a student, as a child, I have made my millions, I am a millionaire. Nice and well, right? Now, the sheer fact that apparently I have parents out there, fine, I might not be married to a woman, I might not have a kid, but the sheer fact that I have parents back at home, one, it teaches me to be responsible because I understand that I do owe society something in return. That is what we are standing for. Secondly, it is much cheaper to have in-home care services than going into nursing homes and paying for them. Panel, an average nursing home, an average nurse care earns 24,000 per month. 24,000 that is remitted from the government coffers to pay this nurse, yet apparently you are seated there, you are capable and willing, you are capable of actually looking after this parent. Panel, make me understand, will the government waste time to actually try as much as possible to cater for these parents when it already has a youth that is able? They come and tell us that apparently, how is it possible? Why should the youth be burdened by this? Parent, a young person has a better incentive and time to help a parent in their olden ages than they do. They'll come and run a case on apparently how they had the time and will to do that. But panel, understand that context differs heavily. How those people were raised, how those people actually continued existing in their timeline in accordance to what we have in contradictory is very, very different. Yes, question from the panel.
You say your case is hinged on capability and willingness of the children to take care of their parents.
Yes.
What if they don't have this capability or ability?
Exactly. Panel, it was clearly stated earlier on the hows that this law can be implemented. We said, one, we can raise public awareness. Parents and guardians are considered vulnerable groups in a society. Therefore, creating awareness of this as a group helps in advocating for their own assistance. Secondly, we talked about custody. Custody was talked about based on the congruent financial and social capacity to cater for them. Therefore, there is minimum strain. What does that mean, panel? It has been clearly said. If I have 3 children, out of those 3 children, one of these kids apparently is better off and is a millionaire or can help, then that kid is the one who's going to have the burden of helping these children. Panel, understand that consistent implementation of these social services and regulations to ensure that the old are taken care of have been put in place and can still be followed up to make sure that these parents are actually better. What are we telling you in terms of impact in our world in comparison to theirs? In our world, people are morally upright, and society in itself is very inclusive and caring. Why is that possible? Because one, we understand that the tenets of society, the tenets that apparently bring up the good and moral standings that we believe and vouch for as a society, originate from these people who we call guardians and parents. That is one thing we stand for and advocate for. Secondly, in our world, accountability is actually better, because for that, people are actually, for the common good, we believe that everybody must be catered for, everybody must be assisted. That is one thing we are talking about. Panel, if there is a possibility of dire consequences in the law that is provided, then there is better incentive for people to work harder. They talk about the reason if the pressure of people wanting to go to jail, etc., etc. Panel, understand that if I know I'm going to go to jail for not helping my mother, I will strive as much as possible to even work in the street to make sure that my mother is actually working better. Therefore, I am better, my mother is better. In our world, there's no way they can prove that we are bad actors in this motion, and that is how we win the motion. Thank you.
We thank that speaker for that fine speech. We welcome the last speaker of this debate, the second opposer, to conclude for us this debate. Here.
You get from creation of families, the amount of sheer labor you get from creation of these different families, works to support the state in itself, works to support community in itself, but only works to ensure that the family works. I'll take it.
It tells you that there's a problem in status quo. That is why we are considering making this a mandatory law. So how do you guarantee that people will take care of the parents minus this law?
Okay. Up tells you that already families are not being taken care of, the elderly are not being taken care of. They don't tell you why this happens. We already tell you that people do not have employment, people do not have money. If you choose to enforce this law without creating employment, without creating money, the law won't work. It generally means you're just willing to take these people to prison because they're unemployed and they're poor people. We don't think there's any justification for you to harm someone who's poor in society just because they're poor. But secondly, we don't think that's the justification to decide that someone else is better in terms of family because they're richer than I am. I think I can actively work in these spaces, support my parents, take them to a walk, or take them to their community services, take them to your churches. I think this is a valuable contribution to family. If you just say sending money to this parent is what is important, I will send the money to this parent. I will not use the fare I need to go visit my parents. I'll just divert it to something else. We think there's no justification for you to value money over emotional capacity, over physical capacity, over relationships created in family, just because you need to support these people. But secondly, we don't think there's any justification for the government that is already aware that these people are poor, these people cannot create this amount of investments towards their parents, these people cannot do this consistently to apply such a law. It means the law in itself is meant to harm people. We don't think a government has a justification to harm people in return. So what do we tell you and why we think it's more important than what they tell you? One, there's already market saturation. These people will be poor either way. If you're applying a law that jails poor people, it's bad. But secondly, even if we are deciding to portray families as bad scenarios, we think the government is more incentivized to actually protect these people. They pay taxes. Even if they don't pay taxes, over the course of time, they have worked to ensure the success of this government through labor, through contribution of taxes, through voting, etc., and putting leaders who put policies in these spaces. We don't think there's any justification for people who have done this over the course of time to limit people who do not have the same spaces, who do not have the same capacity to choose and pursue whatever they want to do. I think I love my parents and I'll send them money. I don't need the government telling me to send them money.
We thank that speaker for that fine speech. That brings us to the close of this semi-finals round. The panel will take a few minutes to deliberate. All the best to the teams.
Let's let the people come in, those who are coming in. We have finalists. Panel 1. The teams that are in panel 1, can I see you? teams that were in panel 1. The winners. The winners of panel 1 are the opposers. So that means we have Nika and Brian Ndolo. We do have a competition in the finals. The winners of panel 2, which is semi-final 2, are the winners are the opposers. So that's Team Joseph, Kyle, and Team Wandia. So for the 2 teams, please go to the judges to get your questions for the finals.